Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. Welcome back to Industry Insights. We're here for part 2 of our series with Ellen Voie on women in trucking. And if you missed part 1, go back and watch it. Part 1 was all about why this organization exists, how it was founded, and all of the evolution that happened over time. So you don't want to miss part 1. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. But today we're continuing that discussion, and we're really focusing on the practical realities of implementing everything that their mission sets out to do. You know, I want to hire more women in the workplace. Or maybe I am a woman looking to enter the trucking industry. How do I do it? What are the first steps? So again, we have Ellen Voie back here to really talk us through all of that. So Ellen, again, first off, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So again, I hope and I assume that everybody went and watched part 1, but if they didn't, could you just give a really high level overview of what Women in Trucking is and why it exists?
So a nonprofit association that I founded in 2007, March of 2007. And the mission, pretty simple: encourage the employment of women, address obstacles, and to celebrate success. In other words, feature pioneers and tell their stories. So basically, it's an association with about 8,000 members in 10 countries to really elevate to get more women in the supply chain.
Yeah, perfect. And so that sounds great. Let's say I hear that and I'm someone who wants to implement all of that and get started. Where do you often see people take those first steps correctly and maybe incorrectly?
The first step is to ask a lot of questions. Okay. And as an association, as a nonprofit, we're a trade organization, which means we're there for the networking opportunities. We're there to provide information, education, support for our members. So that means 2 things. One is we have to listen to our members, constantly listen to our members. And whether you're a CEO, whether you're a driver, whether you're a diesel tech, whatever, what is it that we can do to help you make your job easier, more productive, whatever? What is it that you need from us? Because we are a collective voice. And that's what a nonprofit association is. It's a voice for its members. So you have to know what your members are thinking and what your members need. Then you take that information and you turn it into educational, like maybe webinars, white papers. So one of the first white papers we came out with was an anti-harassment employment guide that was written with J.J. Keller and Associates in Neenah about what do you do regarding harassment in between drivers? Yeah. And it was gender neutral. But what I really liked about it was the information that it gave to carriers, like, what do you need to do? So I can tell you that 30 years ago, if I said, do you smoke? Do you smoke? Fine, you're going out together. You know, and that was it. You're going out and training. Now it's like you need to have an expectations exchange. And guess what? You need to ask, can we discuss politics? Can we discuss religion? Do you have any food allergies? How often do you need to stop? Do you need to get home? I mean, you need to have an expectations exchange. And the other thing in regard to harassment is if you tell a joke and I'm offended, I need to say, I do not want to hear that. And if you do it again, then I'm going to report you, or a derogatory comment or a term. So the anti-harassment employment guide we came out with very much to educate our members, especially maybe a carrier that didn't have an HR department that could do something like that. Then we started doing things like how to attract and retain female drivers. And we started bringing that data out. And here's a tip for your listeners. If you are looking for more female drivers, one of the things that we learned was a lot of female truck drivers have a motorcycle license. In fact, it was very unscientific, but I went on our Facebook page and I said, how many of you female CDL holders have a motorcycle license? Which is ironic because I'm a CDL holder. I have a motorcycle license. Okay. About 80%
Wow.
So guess where you should be recruiting?
Harley Davidson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go to a charity ride. Have one of your recruiters or your happy female drivers go in the charity ride, put your shirt on. So it's stuff like that. It's like, I want to be able to give you information that you can take back and use. And then why do women leave your company? Why do women leave the industry? We have all that data. So we have how to attract and retain female drivers. Also have the Women in Trucking Index, because people always say, what percentage of female drivers are there? Well, do you want to go by the Department of Labor that includes delivery drivers? Do you want, which number would you like to use? And it's around 11%, depending on who you ask. Okay. So it's being a resource to our members so that they can look at our white papers, they can look at the webinars, they can go to the conference and learn and take back best practices. And then the other part of it is networking. Learning from each other and carriers talking, maybe your title is safety director. Maybe you want to talk to other safety directors at a similar size company and learn from them. So it's part of it's education, networking, and just being a resource.
And is it on the website? Like, what's the easiest way for them to access that info?
Actually, all the white papers are free. They're on the website. The webinars are free. They're listed on the website. And one other thing is, and this is a driver portal, and I always had a dream for this, because we would get questions. Drivers would call in and ask questions that you might not have anticipated, like, can you have a felony and get a CDL? Well, the answer is yes and no. Depends what you're hauling. Depends on where you're hauling it. Who you're hauling for. You can't haul government munitions with a felony. But guess what? I asked Waste Management once. I said, do you hire felons? And they said, well, if it's for stealing, we don't care because they can steal all the trash they want. Joke. But anyway, so that's one of the questions. So when people would call in and ask questions, then we would have someone do the research and create the information. And there's a tab on the Women in Trucking website called Driver. And it's just a portal for drivers, men and women, to look at, and a lot of videos, everything from how to do a pre-trip inspection, how to get in and out of a truck, things like that. And so how can we help people find the right job, ask the right questions, and get into a career that works for them? And that's a big part of what Women in Trucking does.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's a lot of what if you're a driver, a female driver trying to enter this industry, trying to figure out the right questions to identify a good place to work. So we can come back to kind of the top down, but if you are a female driver looking to enter the workplace, what are the things that they're looking for, or the questions they can ask of an organization to find the right fit? Because if you're an organization, you want to have the right answers for those questions.
Well, the whole point is you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So you don't know what questions to ask. If you don't know that this company will get you home every night, or this one will get you home every 3 days, or this one you're going to be unloading because it's flatbed, or this one, it's tanker and you're going to be climbing up and down, or, and you don't know what questions to ask. And the other part of it is getting your training. There's 3 different types of training, going to a carrier, going to a proprietary school, or going to a publicly funded school. And you need to know what questions to ask and which school to pick so that you get a good training. So it's things like that. It's like when we start getting questions, here's another one. What companies have maternity leave? You're not going to get that at another association. And lactation policy. Do you have a lactation room?
Yeah. I'd imagine that's not common in many of the trucking industry businesses. Yeah.
We had a female driver who was pumping, and she had a camera in her truck, and they said, we'll put a ball cap over when you're pumping for breast milk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's things like that a company doesn't probably think about.
Yeah, but it obviously is incredibly important. So I think a good just kind of starting point. So if you were to be introduced to a company that has really high turnover and no women on their team, or few women, what would you think or expect to be some of the main problems going on behind the scenes, even without looking at numbers?
It's their hiring practices. Okay. We like to hire people who have our values. We like to hire people who look like us. Yeah. So at Women in Trucking, when we were hiring a membership person, we had X number of questions. I think it was like 11 questions. They were all in the same order. We asked every single candidate the same questions. And guess what? They weren't value questions. Because if I ask you a value question, which a lot of companies like to ask, like, what do you think is important about this? Well, guess what? Who determines if it's the right answer? Yeah. I'm determining that. That means I'm sharing your values. So it means that they're not really being blind in regard to, or let's say neutral, in regard to asking the question. Secondly, they should have a team. who's doing the hiring so that you don't have the unconscious bias. Thirdly, do we have women in leadership roles? Because a driver's going to look at a company and say, look at the vice president is a woman. Or I'll have CEOs of companies and they'll come up to me and they'll say, well, Ellen, I'm surrounded by women. And I'll go, are they in HR and marketing? Or are they in operations? And they're like, oh. And I'm like, it's important that you promote women into roles that are visible to other women. And when women can see that there are women in higher roles, they're like, oh, that company does value me as a woman. So I can pick out lots of things if they have a very slim female population that they're probably not listening to what their drivers are asking for.
Yeah. I'd imagine it can be difficult as an owner to step back and realize that you or the employee practices that you've installed are the problem. What do you find are the ways to get people to kind of process and realize that they might be the problem and maybe there's some things they can do to help that problem? Because that's pride obviously steps into a lot of that.
So I have this whole presentation on unconscious bias. And we had a woman, Valerie Young, I think her name was, and she wrote a book about women working in a male environment. And I'm going to give you a real quick story that I like telling people. So men are the monkeys and women are the penguins, okay? And so the penguin really wants to work her way up and the monkey's her boss. And the monkey says, oh, I'm going to start meeting with you every Monday morning at 8 a.m. and let's discuss your career advancement. And the penguin's like, yes. And the monkey goes, okay, we're going to meet at the top of that tree. And the penguin's like, okay. So the penguin gets there at 3 a.m, climbs up the tree, sitting on the branches like, whoa, this is not my environment. The monkey climbs up and goes, what's wrong with you? Why do you not feel comfortable here? And it's a bigger issue. And it's because we're trying to fit in. So when I say, if you give women men's uniforms, we'll wear them, okay? We're trying to fit in. We don't like creating a disturbance. But if you want to be the employer of choice, you're going to say, how can I make you more comfortable? Maybe we should meet on the igloo.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of self-reflection that has to happen for you to be successful. It can't just be we'll add this to our HR policy list, right? It has to be top down a lot of times, especially if it's a smaller organization where maybe there's only, a couple of people making decisions. It can't be just lip service if you want it to be effective.
It has to be top down, but it also has to come. So I used to get invited to a lot of carrier meetings where they'd bring the women in and the women would share things with me. They're like, well, yeah, there's no restroom at this delivery point. And I'm like, did you tell your company? And they're like, no. And then I'd see them on Facebook and they'd say, well, I'm delivering to this place and they won't let me use their restroom. And I'm like, did you tell your carrier? Because if your carrier doesn't know, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And I'd imagine that comes back to what we talked about too, of like they may feel like they're trying to not rock the boat and not create those problems. And so as an employer, as an owner, part of it is also making sure you allow space for feedback, which you've mentioned you have, but that has to be part of your culture if you want to be able to make the changes correctly where your employees feel like they can tell you so that you don't just live in your blind spots.
So one of the most powerful things I heard in all my years, and obviously it made an impact, but I was on a panel and there was a CEO of a logistics company and he said, I'm surrounded by women. He said, I have a lot of women in the C-suite. He said, and I've got one woman who's very, very emotional, very emotional. She can cry at the drop of a hat. In my mind, I thought his next words were going to be, she needs to figure that out. His words were, I need to learn to understand her. And I sat there looking at him thinking, that's it. You got it. Make it an environment where she can feel comfortable being emotional. Don't tell her to change. Why do we have to change? Why can't the environment change? So that's the secret. It's not that big of a secret.
How often do you see people who they decide to make this change and they get like one female employee and kind of call it there? Or
we did it.
Yeah, exactly. Does that happen where it's like we've made a change? And I guess part of it too is, is there like a threshold of like we've made enough change where we're impacting things where we feel like we've impacted the culture enough because we've got 2 employees? Is it ever make sense to look at it as a number, or is it larger?
I wouldn't say look at it as a number. Yeah. I'd say look at the influence the women have. Mm-hmm. Again, are they in HR and marketing? Great. That's great to have women in HR and marketing. But how about women in operations or in the C-suite, or in the boardroom? How about that? Yeah. It's their level of influence that's going to make the difference.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you ever see incentive structures or maybe benefits or things of that nature that maybe unintentionally push women out or act as barriers to them coming in?
Well, I'm not a fan of quotas. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can just pick a number and say, once you hit that number, we can all pat ourselves on the back, because I don't think quotas work. And also quotas work against the person who's hired, because when you say, well, I'm going to hire this person who fits this category and this category, other people resent that. Yeah. So I guess it's really being as noticing characteristics as little as possible. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to say this. When I talk to employees of companies who say, I can bring my whole self to work, there's something that people do called covering. And it might be literally covering a tattoo, or it might be wearing your hair differently so people don't think you're of an ethnic group, or it might be not wearing traditional clothing that you feel comfortable in. And so they will cover their true self because they want people to like them or to advance them. If you can go into a company and you see someone with ethnic clothing or transgender, employees or people who may look and act differently, great. That means that they feel comfortable working there. Mm-hmm. That's your key. Yeah.
You're allowing that space. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you're, we talked about it from top down, and you talked about it that there needs to be some bottom up feedback too. I 100% have seen this happen, and I'm sure you've seen it many times, where maybe there is a top-down organizational push and people that really believe in it, and then maybe mid-level managers or supervisors that kind of quietly undermine the mission. So in a situation like that, one, I guess, how can you even identify it, and two, what can you do to mitigate that?
Well, you can typically identify it because they're not going to help you, and they're not going to be part of the conversation. But to mitigate it is really to educate that person. So if you have one vocal person who says, I don't agree with this, mm-hmm. you need to sit down with them and say, can you tell me why? What is it that's stopping you from adopting these policies or accepting these policies? And if you get to the root of it, it's not always what you think it is. And then if you can convince them, and I'm going to give the example of in the trucking industry, when Qualcomm's first came out, drivers would say, I'm not going to let them track me. Mm-hmm. Look at trucks today. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you can't do anything without them knowing your heart rate and your blood pressure. I mean, it's ridiculous. But you take the most vocal opponent. Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's a good example: automated transmissions. Mm. Well, I'm a man. I'm going to drive a stick. Yeah. So you put your most vocal driver and say, would you just test this automated transmission and then give me your feedback? And if you really don't like it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, this was easy, so you get the vocal person and they start convincing the others. Mm-hmm. So if there's somebody who disagrees with a policy or something that you're trying to implement, you need to understand why, and then have them be the voice for why the change is good.
Yeah, and winning those people over, you'll find that the people that don't care either way are fine, but it's the people that are passionate. Maybe they're one way or the other, but they can either be a problem or they could be your greatest, asset of being somebody who can convince the others if they're willing to kind of change their mind. But I'd imagine sometimes you can change your mind, and sometimes that they just may become an obstacle that has to be resolved some other way.
Well, we've all been in the experience where you go to a conference or you go to a session or you do a webinar and you're like, oh, I really like this. I want to adopt these ideas. And you take them back. And everyone's like, I'm too busy to listen.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I've got to focus on, my job for the day. So we can come back to that later. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of frustrating. But mm-hmm. I mean, if you just try to do it a little at a time, it's not too overwhelming.
Yeah. I think we talked about it more on the first episode, but I want to kind of bring it back up of, what are some of the biggest benefits that you've seen of adding women to the workforce? I want to make sure that we re-emphasize that in case anybody didn't hear it the first time.
Well, I'm going to start with the top.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, you need women in boardroom positions, because women make decisions differently than men. And it's been proven that men will take maybe 5 choices, and they'll make a quick decision. They'll narrow the choices. They'll get down to the last 2 and go, okay, let's do this one. Women, if you get those 5 choices, we're going to go look at them and go, did I miss anything? And they're going to call other people. They're going to collaborate. They're going to do their research and say, well, I might have missed something here. What are your thoughts? They're going to take longer to make a decision on average. And then they're going to come back, and then they're going to, again, collaborate. They may end up with the exact same decision as a man. But if your environment says, well, we value quick decision making, guess what? A woman's going to be that penguin at the top of the tree. So it's the environment. So women do make decisions differently than men. Women are risk averse. We talked about that. And so if you're in mergers and acquisitions, a woman's going to ask more questions. Typically, again, I'm generalizing, so I just hope that people...
That's what we got to do.
It's all based on research, so I'm not making this up. And as far as safety, I think more women should be in safety roles, because safety is not that men aren't worried about safety, but we're a little bit more maternal. I've seen female dispatchers talk to drivers like, oh, you don't want to drive in the snow, that's okay. Where I'll see male dispatchers go, well, you can do that. Come on. I've seen both. But and then let's talk about the driver. Women are more risk averse, so we'll take fewer chances. We'll stop probably faster to stay out of a potential situation that might not be safe. They're also going to do their homework. They're going to make sure that they know, what's the maintenance of your equipment? How new is your equipment? Where are you sending your drivers? Is it a bad part of town where I might encounter, some loading dock that doesn't have lights, in a bad neighborhood or whatever? And they're going to do their research and find out, where do you send your drivers? What's your culture? Are they really the captain of the ship? How well maintained is your equipment? And do you care about me as a person?
I mean, some of those safety risks, like those might be things you don't even know about your own organization because nobody's thinking about it, and you're not. Maybe you're a man and you're not thinking about it in the same way, and they come with all these questions, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess those aren't safe.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of that too. Okay, so I think that's really helpful for people as they're sitting here saying, sounds like a good idea, but why? We always want to make sure that people understand that it's not just to check a box. It's part of it is because it is 50% of the population. It should be representative of your workforce, but there's also, real benefits, to both sides and from a diversity standpoint and the things that they bring to your organization.
There's a lot of data out there on companies that have a higher percentage of women in leadership have higher profits.
Yeah, which nobody can.
So let's talk about money.
Yeah.
It's all about money.
Yeah, perfect. So one of the things I know people you've probably heard anecdotes, people who say, this is what I'm going to do. They bring more women to their workforce and it doesn't bring them benefits. What do you typically see that they've done wrong, or where's the disconnect usually?
Well, bringing more women in, again, what are their roles? How much influence does that woman have over, the rest of the organization? And again, are you letting her have a seat at the table? Yeah. Having women at the table and not letting them speak is even worse. And it happens all the time. And if you sit in a room full of women, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, I came up with this idea. I brought this idea. Everyone kind of poo-pooed it. And then later a man said it and everyone's like, that's a great idea. Yeah. Well, guess what? There's a way to counter that. And I talk about unconscious bias, but one of them is, I'm really glad that you picked up on my thoughts earlier. Let's elaborate that and work on this. Don't just, for women too, you can't just sit there and say, that was my idea. You can't. Yeah. You have to speak up. So, I mean, it's a two-way street. Women have to speak up and not let them have unconscious bias against them. But we all have to be aware of what unconscious bias is. And I'm going to throw a couple at you that you're going to laugh at. So let's talk about the cellophane wars. Okay. So the next time you have someone brings in donuts or cupcakes, sit back and watch who takes the cellophane off.
Really?
Watch.
Okay.
Because a lot of times and again, I'm generalizing. This is in a book called You Should Smile More. A lot of times men will sit there and wait for the women to come in and take the cellophane off. So watch next time.
I can envision it happening, and a lot of the times that have come in recently. So,
well, and the other one is who should take notes? Oh, Sally, you take notes. You have good handwriting.
I've probably said that. Yeah.
And you know what Sally needs to say? I took notes last time. You take notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I bet there are more of those than we have time to go through.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the problem is that those little things that can feel little as a one-off example can add up, and it can lead to somebody feeling unappreciated, uncomfortable in a workplace, and ultimately you see somebody leave and you're like, it's because I didn't pay them enough, or any number of things that aren't the real reason.
It's not the pay.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important about what you guys do is it's not just here's why it's important, here's the research, which before you guys there wasn't much of, but also here are the things that you should be thinking about as an employer and as an employee, the questions that you should be asking yourself, and the questions that you should feel comfortable to ask of your employer and your environment, because they're important.
Exactly.
And so, we've talked about kind of the vision of things, but are there things that happen today positively that you would have thought would have been, impossible when you were starting this 20 years ago?
Well, there's one subject that I always am hesitant to get into, but 20 years ago when I would ask companies, what are you doing to bring in more women? And they'd say, we just hire the best person. Yeah. Well, guess what? They're doing that now to transgender drivers. When I'll say, what are you doing to attract transgender drivers? And they go, we just hire the best person. I go, that's the wrong answer. And I did have a CEO of a trucking company call me one day, and he said, thank you for bringing this up, because we actually had a discussion and we were ready when we had our first applicant. So again, I want people to talk. I want people to think. I want people to be prepared. There's a lot of transgender drivers out there.
Okay. Yeah.
And they are looking for jobs. They just want to do the job. Yeah. But if a company is going to not be ready with the right answers when they ask those questions, they're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same type of thing where if you don't allow yourself to have the conversation internally in advance and prepare yourself to be able to provide comfort and answer those questions correctly, you're going to be just as unprepared as the same people who are, I can't hire any women, or all of my men look the same. It's the same. A lot of it will sometimes just require you to acknowledge that these are people that are in the workplace and they have their own expectations of comfort, that it's on you as a culture and as an organization to provide so that you can hire them.
Exactly. And again, this industry, I don't think the trucking industry is prepared enough.
I would imagine that most industries don't think about it enough and aren't prepared enough for, it's just as people realize that this is something they could be comfortable as an identity coming out into the community, like they're going to expect to be able to be comfortable with that identity at work. It's not just a outside of work thing, and you want to be the type of organization that allows for them to exist and be comfortable there
and bring their whole self.
Exactly. Yeah, just like what we talked about last time. Yeah. So, I guess as a last question here, and you're kind of already touching on it some, but what excites you most, I guess, about the next generation of women in trucking that you've seen come up?
Well, when you started out and asked me how I got into trucking, and I said I didn't mean to be in trucking, most women my age will give you that answer. They're going to say, well, I saw an ad, or a friend invited me to come to a carrier. What excites me about the next generation is that they're actively saying, I want to work in supply chain. And guess what? There's actually classes and there's schools that actually are focusing on supply chain. Yeah. If you had said, do you want to go to school for supply chain back in the 70s, I would have said, what? Yeah. I don't even know what traffic was.
Doesn't exist.
Right. So the fact that they're really focusing, there are high schools now that are focusing on supply chain, because people are starting to realize that the supply chain is a huge industry. And it's not just warehouses and trucks and loads and things like that. It's people, and it's much more massive than people people realize. So that excites me that people are actively saying, I want to work in the supply chain.
Yeah. And it's funny. A lot of people that didn't even acknowledge it as an industry option, now they've been pursuing it since high school. That's got to feel very different, but also very encouraging and validating.
Well, so that brings me into something you didn't ask me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to is the foundation.
Okay.
In about 2 years after I started the Women in Trucking Association, someone offered me a check and said, I want you to use this for a scholarship. And I'm like, oh, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Because
it's just, do I put it in a bank account? What's next? Yeah.
Well, because Women in Trucking is a trade organization where you pay dues. So I had to start a foundation. And I'm so proud of the foundation. The foundation gives scholarships for CDL, safety, technical, like diesel tech. And then the fourth category is very loose in saying that if you work in supply chain and you want to advance your career, we're going to help you pay your tuition. And they've given out, I want to say like $1 million. I'm not sure the exact number anymore, but since 2010, the foundation, it's a separate organization from the Women in Trucking Association because the foundation is a charitable organization. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've given out a lot of money in scholarships.
I mean, that's incredible. It's because it's not just that we're teaching and educating and creating this. We're enabling it in a way that I think that's really powerful. And so is that the same thing where they would go to the Women in Trucking website to find out more about the foundation as well?
Sure. They can get there from the Women in Trucking website, but they can also go to womenintruckingfoundation.org. Has its own separate board of directors, separate association management firm, totally legally separate. So a lot of people don't know about the foundation. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that.
I mean, that's something that if you're providing that much, you want to make sure that people know it's an option where if they're really excited about the industry, they don't always have to do it alone. There's ways to get in. And I want to make sure too, people, that are excited and like hearing and hearing what you have to say and maybe what you have to write, are there any other, I think that you've written a couple of books that are out right now. Yeah.
So I recently came out with a book and called it From Dispatcher to Disruptor.
Okay.
And it's really my journey in starting and growing the Women in Trucking Association. But I would encourage people to read it for a number of reasons. One is if you want to learn about nonprofits, it's the growing pains working with a board of directors. Two, if you want to understand the transportation industry, because I really talk about the history. Because since I started in the industry in 1979, the industry has changed a lot. And so I talk a lot about that in the book as well. And then the third part is if you're interested in women in non-traditional careers, this is definitely a book that you would want to read. So it's called From Dispatcher to Disruptor, and it's hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and now it's out in Audible.
Hardcover, that's legit.
It's legit.
Awesome. Well, there is one question I always ask every guest who's on the show. So you have two options, either your favorite book that you've read recently or your favorite movie that you've watched recently. It could be, you can do both. You can do one or the other. And let's assume it's not your book, because I'm sure that's actually the best book you've read recently.
Actually, I'm not a big movie watcher.
TV counts too if you'd rather do that.
Yeah, no, I think... Yeah, sometimes I just watch TV for nods.
Yeah, it's like it's in the background.
Yeah, but I would say I'm in a book club, and we recently read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which if you haven't ever read the Dale Carnegie book, and I've read it a number of times, and when you go back and read it, and I don't know how many editions it's been in, how many languages, but that's a book that I've read before, but every time I read it, it's like, that really makes sense. So I would say if you haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People, go back, get it, and read it once a year at least. Yeah,
and I mean, it could just hit you in different ways depending on where you are in your life and just what you're dealing with at the moment. But that is definitely, I mean, that's a great one. Yeah.
Especially these days, it seems like everybody is so contentious. And that one talks about, let's understand what you're trying to say, and then let's work through this.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for being here and sharing everything about women in trucking.
I appreciate it.